Okay, so there's no really particular order to these shelves except that authors and series are sort of grouped together. So these two books are Milton's Paradise Lost and Dante's Divine Comedy, and they're these really nice illustrated versions of them. If you know what these are, they're epic poems, and they're really beautifully illustrated. Just to give you an example, they're fantastic epic poems, and although they're a little hard to understand, they're definitely worth the read. And then I have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson here because it sort of fit. Then I have my beautiful Ellen Hopkins collection, and if you've seen my author review, you'll know which ones I have, and if you haven't, definitely go check that out if you want to know more about Ellen Hopkins. Next I have Legend by Marie Lu, and I read this when it first came out and I really enjoyed it, although I fell out of love with the young adult genre and never continued. Same with the Beautiful Creatures series by Kami Garcia and Margaret Stahl, so I'm not going to be continuing those. The next book I have is by Kelly Armstrong, which is Omens. This is a adult, I think it's a paranormal book. It was actually really good, and I got it signed, and she's got probably one of the nicest signatures I've seen. The two books I have are older books. I went through a little kick of buying just older books. So the first one is a tiny book about masters, pieces of literature, and I bought this one because it had the Bronte sisters' work in it, along with Lord Byron and Blake. So, and the next one I got from someone, and it's just 50 Great Short Stories. It's very old, it's sort of falling apart. The next one I have is Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, and this book is really old, and if I am not mistaken, I remember doing a Google search of it and found it was worth a decent amount of money. The book I have is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I wanted to read this, and I definitely wanted to read like an older copy, and I found a really nice copy with minuscule illustrations, but it was really good. The next few books I have are another version of 1984, one of my favorites, A Bend in the Road by Nicholas Sparks, which I have not read, and I don't know why I have this, to be honest. And then Zombies or Ex-Zombies, I don't know, but it is about the apocalypse sort of breaking out, and I read this quite a while ago, but I did enjoy it. Okay, so the next book I have, I read this for school, and it is Elijah of Buxton by Christopher Paul Curtis. That I have is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, and I actually wasn't going to pick this up until one of my teachers recommended it, and I absolutely loved it, and I still haven't seen the movie, but I definitely want to get around to doing that. The next one I have is Girl Interrupted by Susanna Kaysen. I picked this up after I read Brain on Fire, because I sort of went through a non-fiction kick, and this book ended it. I didn't like anything about this book. It was so, I don't know, it wasn't exciting. It wasn't as good as I thought it would be. Next book I have is Goth, a novel of horror by Otoshi. This is a Japanese translated book. It was really creepy, and I don't even know why I picked it up, but I went through a horror phase, I guess. The book that I have is a book of poems by Sylvia Plath. I had to pick it up so I could own a copy. As depressing as it is such a fantastic read. The next book I have is The Shipping News by Annie Prulux, I think. I never read this, and I got it for Christmas, and it just didn't seem like anything I wanted to get into right now, but I keep it just in case. And then I have another nonfiction, America Alone by Mark Stein. I read this a very long time ago. I can't even remember what it's about. Two books that I have are just sort of random, and that is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, The Giver by Lois Lowry, and if you haven't seen the trailer for the movie coming, definitely go see it. It looks really good. The next I have is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I picked this up before the movie came out because I wanted to read it, and I loved it. Next is another copy of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Gothic short stories by David Blair. I read this a long time ago. I don't think I liked it as much as I thought I wanted to. The next one is The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. A friend recommended this to me, and I realized that I think this is considered fantasy, so this would be the first actual adult fantasy book that I've ever read. It was actually really good. I guess a video game is based off of it. It's a guy with like super white hair, if you know what it's called. The next book I have is The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, and I actually never ended up reading this. The next book I have is We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I got about 50 to 100 pages in. I just could not go on. I was really excited to read this, and I'm glad I only paid 50 cents for it instead of $20. For some reason, I just couldn't get into it. The next book I have is The Prayer by Al Raines, and this was boasted as the scariest book that you could ever read. So it took me forever to actually find it in print, and when I finally did, it was disappointing and it wasn't scary at all. The next book I have is Erebos by Ursula Ponansky. This one is about, I think it's a video game or something. It's been a while since I've read it, but I did enjoy it. The next book I have, We Have Always Lived in a Castle by Shirley Jackson. I had read her short story, The Lottery, and enjoyed it, so I went to pick up something else by her, and this was pretty creepy. And then we have Ribbon by Carol Ann Biddle, which is a local author in my city, and this book really pissed me off. I didn't like it. The book I have is House by Frank Peretti and Ted Decker. I picked this up sort of on a whim, and I actually really enjoyed it. It's about these couples who go to this house, and this house is sort of alive. It was actually really interesting. Then I have The French Lieutenant's Woman by John Fowles, and I read this for a contemporary British literature class. And I didn't really like it at the beginning, but then I sort of grew to love it, and it has like 5 different endings attached to it, so that's pretty interesting. And it's fucking folded to shit. Okay, and the last book, that I have is Personal Effects, Dark Art by J.C. Hutchins, and this is a really interesting book because it's a mystery, and you follow the book, and then there's all these actual clues that you can touch, and then it's a really fun book. The book I have is The Girl Who Was on Fire. So it's sort of essays on the Hunger Games, and then I got another one with more essays on the Hunger Games. I went through this phase with getting these books. And then I have The Psychology of Harry Potter, which wasn't as good as the other ones. I felt like it was reading too much into Harry Potter. And I also have one of these for the Twilight series, which we will get to in just a bit. So the next books I have, if you've seen my book haul, you know why I have so many of the Harry Potters. I had the first 4 in soft cover, and then the 5th one in the adult version, and then the last 2. So I wanted a matching set. So here's the culmination of that. And then I have the replica of the Tales of the Beedle Bard. If you've seen my 7 Deadly Sins tag, you know exactly what this is because I go in depth about what it is. Over here we have my Margaret Atwood collection. I don't have everything that she's ever written, but here it is, and this is my favorite one she's written, Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale. If you haven't read that, go read that right away. It's definitely eye-opening. The next few books that I have are the I Am Number 4 series, the Lorien Legacies. I have the first 3, and I haven't read the 4th one. The next that I have is the Dexter series. He came out with one more book, which I am not going to read because I sort of gave up on the series. And then we have The Child Thief by Bram, which is sort of another take on Peter Pan. I was really enjoying it. It's illustrated really nicely. Let me just find one. It's illustrated really nicely, except I wasn't expecting it to be all about war, so I didn't end up finishing it. Next book, I didn't even get through either. It was really boring. And then the Match trilogy, which I'm not going to finish because I didn't care about the characters at all. And then I sort of went through a serial killers kick during the summer because I got the Criminal Minds newest season on DVD and sort of marathon that. So then I got the 2 books that are just different cases from Criminal Minds. And then I found these really cool books. The first being the Killer Book of Serial Killers, so it has like a short description of different serial killers from all over the world, and it's really creepy, but it was really informative. Kind of gives you like a 30-second information about it. And then the Killer Book of Cold Cases, and these are really sad because these are cases that aren't solved yet, and a lot of them are pretty gruesome. The book that I got is Forsaken by Lisa M. Stacy, I think it is. I seen a book trailer for it and it looked really good, and the cover is just really beautiful, but I think the second one came out and I didn't really know that it came out, and I don't know if I'm going to continue with it. So let me know down below if you've read this. The books I have are Dante's Divine Comedy. I got these first before I got the nice edition I showed you before, so these just sort of sit here. The next few books I have are The Hobbit by Tolkien and then the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I haven't read those yet. I plan on doing it. It's just a little daunting. And then I have my sort of Twilight collection, so The Host. I got the first graphic novel of Twilight and never ended up continuing with it. I sort of fell out of love with it. And then here is the essays on the Twilight series. This one was alright. Ironically, didn't talk about how toxic their relationship is. But here is the rest of the series. And then I have a series of Unfortunate Events, 1 through 13. And then I have an extra first one because I managed to find this one for $1.99 on Book Outlet, which is so exciting. And yeah, I do plan on rereading these this year, but I want to sort of diminish my TBR pile first. So yeah, this is part 2 of my bookshelf tour.